Hi, Fred.
Hi, Jay.
This
Back
is
again. Good to see
you
you.
got me. This is Think Tech Talks. Community matters because it does matter. Fred Hemmings says we can do better, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Here with former Senator Fred Hemmings, former state senator in Hawaii. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for letting me be here.
I've always enjoyed talking with you. You always have so many ideas, and you're a great conversationalist too, I might add.
I enjoy it.
It's fun to be with you. So, one of the things that we have talked, you and I, in the past about is nuclear energy. And since energy is, so important to these days, and everybody is talking about energy and renewable energy and fossil fuel versus renewable energy and whatnot. I mean, it's a big conversation. It's important, critical to the future of the state, in my view. We should talk about nuclear because I think it's been forgotten in the conversation. And the fact is, that what happened in Fukushima should not put a damper on everything. And I read recently, I think it's the state of Georgia, somewhere in the south, is actually building a plant now, a nuclear energy plant.
Yes, they are.
And all through France,
90%.
90% in France, yeah.
France is 90%. 80% of their waste is recycled, and they only have to store, which they do on site, 20% of their waste. So they're at the cutting edge of world energy.
With a relatively small plant, a contained plant, and these days the technology is so different than it was in 3 Mile Island in 1979. It's not that dangerous, really.
Jay, there's a lot of misinformation about nuclear energy, and those who care to really examine the facts, including many environmentalists, are coming to the conclusion that it is the energy of the future and we desperately need it. It's clean environmentally. Right now, over 70% of the nation's energy comes from fossil fuels, mostly coal. By the way, more people have died in one coal mine accident or one oil rig blow up than have died in Fukushima.
Lest we forget.
We forget. So Fukushima is a terrible, terrible thing, and don't let me downplay the downside risk. There's something called the cost-benefit ratio, and nuclear energy is by far and away the safest form of energy in the world by fact, by history, by number of deaths or accidents. And we have not had any deaths in America because of nuclear energy. The military has operated nuclear submarines since the 50s.
Right here.
We have, it's so funny, Jay, because they put in the Constitution, in the 78 Constitutional Convention, that you need a 2/3 supermajority to have a nuclear energy plant here. And while they're doing that, they fail to recognize at any given time there are 5 or 6 nuclear reactors in Hawaii. They're called nuclear submarines, and they've been 100% safe. So it really is something that is really misunderstood. They're very cost effective. It's 36 cents a kilowatt hour now for electricity in Hawaii. The highest in the nation.
Nuclear is like 3 cents.
Yeah, 3 cents, but by the time you get it to market and distribute it, it's about 12 cents a kilowatt hour.
Including the investment.
Yeah, including the investment, servicing the debt.
And 12 cents is a lot cheaper than anything else right now.
And what's happening is, what I'm a very big advocate of is a new technology. Right now, most of the nuclear energy in America is being produced by what I call dinosaur technology. Big nuclear plants, 1,500 megawatts. Now they have something called small modular reactors, which are defined as 300 megawatts or less. Nuclear submarines are small modular reactors. And
what is it? Why do you say modular?
It's modular because it can be built somewhere else and brought to the site and installed, like a modular office or a modular facility of some sort. It's not built on site. They're also redundant. Once you have one design, you can build the same design.
So it's cheaper.
Way cheaper, and depending on the size you get. And they can range any size. Hyperion was a company that had one that was going to make for 10 megawatts, which is a lot of energy. Some of the bigger ones by Babcock, Wilcox, and others are going to be 200. Small modulars are defined as 300 megawatts or less. The most important thing is they can be sequestered underground. The other thing that's advantageous about them is they're redundant. You can put in 5 of them to have all the energy needed. 5 300 megawatt small modular reactors would supply all the energy for Oahu.
Little ones.
Yeah, and you put them underground, so
They wouldn't have a big footprint at all.
No, and they're much safer because they're underground. And geopolitically, they're also very advantageous for America because right now we're getting too much oil from enemy states that would just as soon see us gone, especially in the Middle East. So they make sense politically, they make sense environmentally, they make sense economically, and they're just not being allowed in the marketplace because of a lot of misconception in the public.
So what is the path? In other words, can I pick up the phone and order one?
No,
Who has them?
The big stumbling block in America right now, besides the public's not aware of how advantageous they are, is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years just to get the license to build one.
That's a lot less than H3.
Well, H3, we'll talk about that in some other show. That's a political problem. There are 104 reactors in the country, and there's about 64 sites with some with two reactors. A Southern company in Atlanta, North Atlanta, is now putting in the first reactor in 30 years, and it's going to be 2 reactors, 2,200 megawatts, $14 billion. So it's a huge capital investment. But the good news is that the energy is 30 years, and they keep producing energy, and they produce without increasing fuel costs. Once you put in the radioactive material, it heats the water for a great number of years. So at nighttime, you can keep the turbines spinning. You can energize electric cars. You can desalinate water. One of the proposals I had for the U.S. military.
By the way, I heard that Larry Ellison's plant,
Yes,
desalinated, was approved. How do you like that?
that's good.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. But unfortunately, it's going to probably have to be fueled by coal or oil. So it's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be polluting. If you had a small modular, I hope to talk to Larry one of these days. There's a perfect place in Hawaii, to get more specific, to put a small modular reactor or 2, and that's on Kahalawi. The Hawaiians could get lease rent for Kahalawi. It could supply energy for Molokai, Lanai,
Sure, with a cable.
and Maui, and with the cables. And that way, it would just take the huge cost of it, and it would be isolated from a populated area. So it really makes tremendous sense. For international benefit, I'm advocating small modular reactors on what I would call energy ships. A 300 megawatt small modular reactor on a ship that the Navy builds. Navy can license something real quick. They don't have to go through the Washington bureaucracy.
Sure, that's why the liquid natural gas facility is planned for Pearl Harbor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can go through it. But if they had a small modular reactor on an energy ship, you can take that energy ship and pull it up into, it would especially be helpful in third world crisis or natural disasters, where you can take energy, desalinate fresh water. Fresh water is in very dire straits not in America, but in third world countries.
Soon everywhere.
Yeah, electricity. So there's enough water to drink. It just has to be purified.
Yeah.
The purest water and the purest environment in the world is in a nuclear submarine. They make their own water, and they make their own air, and it's taken right from the ocean. And it's the purest. So nuclear energy would solve a tremendous amount of problems. There is a downside risk, but that can be, if managed properly, held to pretty much zero. We've never had an accident in the United States
but
that's killed anybody.
Honestly, I mean, I understand, and I agree with much or all of what you're saying, but I'm thinking that there are barriers in this state of Hawaii which are formidable. There are people who would oppose. They even oppose clean energy, for goodness sake. How are they going to react to a reactor?
That's another show too.
That's another show too.
This state, in my opinion, suffers from a terrible syndrome where they let the tail wag the dog, and the people that can say the no the loudest often rule the day.
Sure.
It's the just say no state. We stopped geothermal for years because a handful of people said they didn't want it on the Big Island.
Still very limited.
And it's extremely limited. There's only one company, Puno Geothermal, that's producing geothermal energy, and it's like 1/10 of the Big Island's demand.
Or of what they could produce.
Oh, they could produce
that
100%
very
of
same
their,
company.
They actually could export energy if they produced enough geothermal energy. This state said no to, for instance, a super ferry. A handful of recalcitrant politicians and surfers on Kauai stopped it, and they had a blockade, illegal blockade. We stopped a space launch site. I was a huge advocate and one of the early proponents of a space launch site in the southwest flank of the Big Island. We could be literally the world's destination for launching private sector and military space equipment, which is a big business right now. Everything you do, you turn on your iPhone, you find out where you are in your car. And it's all being done with satellites that have been put up in recent times to accommodate these things. So Hawaii.
Let me add one or two to your list. You know, the 30-meter telescope.
Yeah, they're being fought right now.
They're in court. Everybody's fighting. I mean, and the rhetoric is really hard to
They
listen.
might pull. I just was talking to a very well-informed lady about that who works for another company I'm on, and it's absolutely ridiculous. That's already a perfect site for it, and what we're allowing is a handful of dissidents. In this case, some people that think they have some sort of divine right to say what goes on top of the mountain from stopping this to progress. So the just say no syndrome is something we have to overcome.
The sad part of that, by the way, is that our competition for the 30-meter telescope is in Chile.
Yeah.
Okay, and right now, today, while we are playing with all this argument over what happens on Mauna Kea, in fact, another consortium has been created, international consortium with a lot of, universities, to build a 39-meter telescope on the mountain in Chile.
Exactly.
So we're losing it. It's going, over our heads again.
And what it is it's actually poor and recalcitrant and bad leadership in Hawaii, where we don't say, look, we have to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and bringing the space launch industry is going to create a second leg for our economy. We're a single industry state with tourism. Bringing geothermal here 30 years ago when I first advocated it will bring energy independence and diversified energy opportunities. Bringing this telescope here will bring technology and all the related businesses. Those guys in Mauna Kea, they're looking into the beginning of time. I mean, it's so profound. I don't even understand, black holes and wormholes and, quasars and like it's just profound.
It's pushing the scientific envelope.
It's pushing the human horizon to the stars, literally. And so it just, the lack of leadership and, I guess we can't do it. And we're letting people like racist politicians, one of them from Big Island we've recently heard a lot about in the news, blocking things like this happening in Hawaii. And it just doesn't make sense. Jay, the state is precarious. We have one industry, tourism. If it ever burps, or if there's ever an airline strike or shut down, or if have another 9/11, we're on our knees. And the national government's 40% of their budget's borrowed money, and they've got a $17 trillion debt. There's going to be a day when the national government says, sorry, we can't bail you out. So we have to think.
But my question, to roll it back a little, is how are we going to get through whatever this objection process is to do something like nuclear?
Education and leadership. There's no, there are a great number of, believe it or not, enlightened environmentalists. If global climate change is the number one environmental problem in the world, then the number one solution is nuclear energy, because there's no.
It doesn't have an effect on
it would redo our whole
climate change.
economy. We could lead the world in retooling electric cars. We could become the first nation that has electric cars. We could provide enough clean water even to address the needs of third world countries. So it just has all these positive things, and it could be a huge godsend to, like I said, you put 2 small modular reactors on Kaalavi. The Hawaiians are happy because they make productive use of Kaalavi. They can charge lease rent. Mm-hmm. And we have energy from Molokai, Lanai, and Maui. So everybody wins.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought, at least for now. Then we can talk about it again later. Let's talk about some of the other issues that you've identified. But first, I just want to take a minute or two to just sort of get your impression looking back. You were in the legislature a long time. Mm-hmm. You saw a lot happen there.
Yes, I did.
And you must have a sort of general impression looking back, and for that matter, looking forward. And I just wanted to take your temperature. How do you feel about not being there? And how do you feel about how it was and how it is and will be?
People ask me all the time. I miss it immensely. It is a wonderful form. It's a form of democracy, and though there's a lot of compromising, which some people don't like, and there's a lot of back and forth on issues, I really miss it. Having said that, the legislature in Hawaii has a profound problem, and James Madison received a letter from Thomas Jefferson in the 1780s when they were forming the Bill of Rights. And Jefferson listed all things he thought should be included, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all things we know that are in the Bill of Rights. But one of the things that didn't make it, and for a good reason, was Jefferson was terribly afraid of monopolies. Monopolies are antithetic to everything we believe in as far as freedom goes, as far as a competitive marketplace, as part of having fair competition determine the price and cost of goods and commodities. The reason it didn't make it is because intellectual properties should be and are monopolies. But Hawaii is a victim of monopolies, and Hawaiian Electric's a monopoly, a for-profit monopoly, which is in itself paradoxical. And what is wrong with the legislature, in my opinion? It's a monopoly. You've got one party, and you've got no checks and balances. Recently, we had one legislator that changed the whole program in government, and that was a gentleman who Representative Bob McDermott, who blew the whistle on, it's just hard to say this diplomatically, blew the whistle on this Pono program that was teaching kids how to have safe anal sex. I hate to be so explicit, but it's what it was, and that's what they're teaching our kids, so we might as well talk about it publicly. But he blew the whistle on it, and they backed away. But that shows you how necessary checks and balances are, because you need competition in the marketplace of ideas and politics in order to come out with the best product. If you have one person say, okay, we want to build a bigger government to take care of everybody, we want to raise taxes, we want to stifle business, we want to do all the things that are related to what we're doing here in Hawaii, if no one's there to counterbalance that, we get what we got.
How would you change it?
Well, people of Hawaii have to change it at the polls. You would say, we're still in a democracy. If people of Hawaii want to elect a monopoly, and it may be past the point of diminishing returns. I mean, not diminishing returns, but of being saved. Because there was a time, and other economists have written about this in years gone by in the democracies, is where the takers outnumber the makers. And people getting something from government outnumber the people that are paying for it. More people are in the cart than pulling the cart. And we're pretty close to that when you add up the number of people.
Part of the national conversation,
yeah,
too.
It's entitlements, all the people that, this last election, Mitt Romney said, woe is me. Barack Obama added 14 million or whatever it was to food stamp rolls.
But that comment by Romney cost him a lot in the election.
Yeah, but the facts are it was true, and also the facts are Barack Obama said, 14 million people more on food stamps. Hooray! They're voting for me because I'm going to keep giving them. There's been a 1.5% increase in Social Security benefits during his administration per year, and food stamp benefits have increased, I think, 20% or something staggering. In other words, the entitlement programs are totally out of control. And
I wanted to talk about them in the next part of the show. Let's take a break.
Okay, good.
Okay, that's Fred Hemmings, former state senator. This is Think Tech Talks. We're talking about community matters because it does. And the title of our episode here is Fred Hemmings Says We Can Do Better. I'm going to find out what he's telling us. This is Jay Fidel. We'll be right back in a minute.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of Think Tech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our Think Tech talk shows. If you didn't know it, Think Tech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on Think Tech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel of Think Tech. We have some news for you. In addition to our Think Tech TV show and our Asia in Review show on Olelo 54, as of January 1st, we're adding Community Matters to play also 2 hours a week. Check out thinktechhawaii.com for the specific times of each of these shows. We hope you enjoy all three. Mahalo, I'm Jay Fidel. We're back, we're live, we're here on Think Tech Talks on a given Friday. We're talking about community matters because it does with Fred Hemmings. And the title of our episode is Fred Hemmings Says We Can Do Better. Fred Hemmings, former state senator, looking back and looking forward too.
Yeah, I joke around that I live in the future, and the future is going to be what we make it, Jay. And if we choose to stay on the same course and do the same things, expect different results, we're in trouble. And I choose to see a better future and try to fix the things that need to be. I don't live in the past, and I just make it day to day in the present, but the future is where I think we all have to focus our attention.
Well, you were talking about entitlements before the the break, and I wonder if you could express your view of the matter and your concerns and your solutions.
Well, first of all, entitlements oftentimes serve worthy causes. Those that are less fortunate in our society, through no fault of their own, deserve a helping hand, and I believe in it. It's not what they deserve, it's how you deliver it to them, and I believe that in many instances, private sector charities and institutions are much more cost effective in delivering needed services for the poor and downtrodden. But there's some bigger problems. The problem is that government has a monopoly once again on these programs. And in food stamps and medical care, eligibility is a big problem. And let me tell you why I think it is. And these are statistics from when I was in the legislature that may have changed since then. But in order to be eligible for food stamps and or MedQuest or Medicaid, which is the federally subsidized gold-plated medical treatment, you have to have no assets. But you can own a car and you can own a house. The thinking is, oh, you don't want to have someone jeopardize their house. Well, that means someone that's riding a bus, living in a rented apartment, going to work every day and paying their taxes is subsidizing someone who owns a Cadillac Escalade and a house with $200,000 or $300,000 equity, because there's no equity limit on the asset of house or car. And that to me is just, it's ridiculously unfair, and there's a tremendous amount of retired people and other people that are exploiting that. In other words, the normal guy, if you run into financial difficulty, you get a home equity line, a loan or something until you get yourself back on your feet. Well, there's people on the dole from government now that literally, have an asset of a house which they own, or have $200,000 or $300,000 equity in, and drive a fancy car, while other people are riding buses and paying for it. So that's, in my estimation, one of the real problems. There's some other things in the food stamp program, for instance, and it's almost Orwellian. It's so paradoxical and hypocritical. Right now, I just heard, God bless her, she's a beautiful woman, Michelle Obama's advocating getting rid of sugar sodas from the marketplace, and they're going to penalize, they're going to advertise against it and blah, 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 which may be a good idea. But while one segment of government's telling you and running ads and spending money in the Department of Health to tell you what you can or cannot eat, another segment of government is giving food stamps for people who aren't paying for their own food, needy or otherwise.
To buy the same food that you're telling them not to eat.
Yeah, you can buy a canned soda with food stamps, last I checked. They may have changed it. You can buy chips. You can buy the worst, it just can't be prepared.
The worst nutrition.
And there's an easy solution. Let's talk about the solution. A program that really does work is Women and Infant Children, where they give needy mothers money to pay for children, to pay for good nutrition for children. Now, in that program, you can only buy a very short list of healthy food. You can't go buy soda for the kid. You can't buy, chips. You can't buy some of the other things that are less desirable. And so there are solutions to these programs. It's not like, oh, big, mean people want to take away food stamp benefits. No, we want to make them better, more cost-effective, and healthier for the recipients and the people that have to pay for them. So
the program has to be tuned up. Somebody has to get in there and roll up their sleeves.
It's totally out of control. And just the word entitlement, I don't think someone owns a Cadillac Escalade in a house it has an entitlement to free food, and that's exactly what's happening.
You're talking in general about the social safety net, and that's for both federal and state. It's a matter of taking care of people who need help of one kind or another.
Medicaid basically funds most of the local version of it, MedQuest.
Yeah.
But the eligibility requirements are dictated by the federal government. And so the reform really has to come from Washington. They can do some fine tuning here in Hawaii, but the major reform for these programs, and they're out of control. And people have now come to think everybody else owes them this. It's my entitlement. I'm entitled, forget my Cadillac Escalade, and forget my gold bracelets, and forget my, $200,000 equity house. I want free food. And then that's what's happening. I hate to be so blunt about it.
But this adds up big time, and a lot of it is unbudgeted. Well, and the result is that we have a huge deficit.
Yeah, if you look at the Constitution of the United States, the major purpose as specified in the Constitution is for the common defense and the protection of America's interests collectively mostly in foreign affairs. The 10th Amendment spells out that most of the other programs, the programs that are going to aid the socially needy and everything, are pretty much, and the 10th Amendment says this pretty clearly, unless it's clearly enumerated in the U.S. Constitution, it's the states that should be handling a lot of things, because every state has a little different problem, the collective wisdom of that state will address the problem which is best for their state. But these programs at the national level are just out of control, and as a result, it trickles down to us. There's some alarming statistics on current federal budgets. The last I checked, 40% of federal spending is borrowed money. And if the federal government, Jay, was an individual business or an individual person, they'd be declared bankrupt, because we're spending more money. We don't have any, there's no light at the end of the tunnel about the deficit being reduced or stopped. So, and the economy's not growing like it should. We don't live in a robust economy because we're not producing the productivity.
So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that you're a Republican. You haven't changed.
No, labels are funny. I'm a conservative. I believe in the free market with reasonable limitations. I believe in competition in the marketplace. I believe in self-responsibility. I believe that one's destiny, first and foremost, should be controlled by the individual, not the government. I believe in healthy people should get rewarded for living a healthy lifestyle. So a lot of those things are Republican, but I'm also very much a conservationist, or what some people would call environmentalist. I helped create Papahanaumokuakea, the world's largest marine reserve. I believe that we should zone the ocean to eliminate user conflicts and help preserve the ocean better. I believe in visitor stabilization, and all my Republican friends say it's...
Well, what is that? What is visitor stabilization?
I advocated legislatively, and it never got a hearing, a bill that would stabilize the number of visitor accommodations in all forms, anything 30 days or less on each island, so that we stabilize the number of visitor accommodations. And when you have an airline, if the airline's booked solid, you get more productivity out of that seat. You can charge more. If it's not, you can charge less. And I don't mean to have us become an elitist destination. You have rooms that cater to lower budget travelers.
You recognize that the state is fragile, socially, and if you allow too much tourism, you tamper with that fragility.
It's exactly. And Waikiki Beach is, oh man. And so I have to ask the question to anybody, especially in the tourist industry, say, oh, what the hell is Fred Hemmings saying? Well, I'll ask you, what is the reasonable number of tourists? We have 7.5 to 8 million tourists coming here this year. Is 10 million enough? Or should we have 15? How about 20?
Theoretically, the more you have, the more money you make. But we don't have the infrastructure to handle them.
Yeah, it's
and
killing the chicken that lays the golden egg.
Infrastructure includes more than hotel rooms.
Well, no, just the
infrastructure is what we have going for ourselves. And I think if you have too many people coming, then the fragility reveals itself.
The quality of the product.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll downgrade the product. If you had 20 million tourists a year here. Yeah. So in other words, I think any reasonable person, including the people making a lot of money from the tourist industry, would say that there's a number out there that's a reasonable amount of tourists that come here every year.
But how can you control it?
Visitor accommodation stabilization.
You only have a certain. Is that unconstitutional?
No. It's zoning laws. You zone. You say you can only have X number. They did it years ago in Waikiki. It didn't work because they didn't enforce it. The other problem, of course, is enforcing laws. We have had a problem in Kailua with
that was my next question.
Yeah, illegal rentals where people were using homes for visitor accommodations and renting them out.
Still are. No?
Huge problem, and tourism is a wonderful business, not a better business, but we have to, in order to protect itself, we have to stabilize its growth, and we have to put our energy through tax cuts and other incentives to help move other business here.
Before we get to that, when we get to that after the next break, but wouldn't you apply the same kind of analysis to cars, and say that we have X number of people on the island. It's only that big, the island. It only can handle so many people actually, but also it can't handle more than so many cars. Would you try to limit the number of cars that are on the highways?
I've heard told, and the Auto Association would know this very accurately. I heard we have the highest number of cars per capita of any state in the nation, and especially here in Oahu.
We like cars.
Yeah, I love cars too. I love the independent ability to drive.
You don't have a Cadillac Escalade, do you?
No, I have a Honda Civic, and I get about 30 miles a gallon. I used to have a hybrid that got considerably more.
I just had to ask.
No, no, I'm not on food stamps. No, that's a bad joke. I'm sorry. But Jay, I think the major message is that there are solutions to all these problems. The traffic problem, in many ways, our highways are very poorly designed. And when I make a statement, I like to give you evidence of it. And here's some evidence. We're making changes in downtown Honolulu Quarter, and it's really working. It's really improved that area. But if you go from Aloha Stadium to Pearl City, where they built this big fancy off-ramp, there are 3 ridges that go up the mountain. And all 3 of those ridges, there's no off-ramps to the highway, or there's no on-ramps from the highway. And as a result, anybody that going, there's thousands of houses on each ridge. So it's very poor planning. Anybody that goes up those ridges has to either get off at Aloha Tower and weave their way through Aiea, or go all the way to Pearl City and come back to go home. And maybe it wasn't planned properly, but it's not too late to fix.
Well, it goes to a core point about this island anyway, and that is there's a limited amount of land. And everything you do is always overshadowed and undermined by the fact that it's not enough land, including highways. Let me take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to talk, move into tax reform, if you don't mind, because that's related to all of this.
That's what's paying for it all.
And government reform as well. And I don't know, we can talk about other issues that have come up that you have interest in. Fred Hemmings, former state senator, a Republican, a conservative?
No, I'm conservative. I don't want to beat the party label.
Okay.
I want to work with fair-minded Democrats and moderates and independents and anybody who wants to see honest change.
This is Think Tech Talks, Community Matters. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidel here on Think Tech Talks, Community Matters, with Fred Hemmings, former state senator, and sort of ruminating about the issues.
It's a great word. We're chewing on a
yes, we are. Yes, we are.
I love that word.
Yeah, he has so many thoughts of interest, it's sort of rapping about the issues in our state, and he is somehow more free to do so these days. Can I say that?
Very free, yes.
So let's move on to tax reform. We can't cover it all, but that's one thing I would like to cover. And the whole issue about the gross excise tax here is that it's totally regressive and gross, if you will.
Yeah. People don't realize it, Jay, and you hit the nail on the head. I think Missouri or Alabama, one of those states, is ahead of us. But when I was in the legislature, we're the second most regressive taxing. So a lot of people that, we're so wonderful, we take care of the needy in Hawaii, and everybody's all right except for all the people. We also have the highest number of people living in tents and on the streets. But in spite of the claims otherwise, Hawaii is the most regressive taxing state in the nation, or one of them. I think we're second or third. And that is mostly because of a tax called the excise tax. And the excise tax, if a poor person goes to the hospital, a worker, and gets medical care, if they buy drugs that they need to keep themselves happy, or people on fixed incomes, for instance, the elderly, if you buy food, if a hungry person that doesn't have enough money to buy food goes and buys food, they get taxed on it. And the excise tax is the most regressive tax. For years, I advocated eliminating the excise tax on food and drug. Well, I'm calling on you legislators and others who follow the legislative process to call your legislators, and there was a bill that's been put into another omnibus bill, which is a death sign for legislation, to eliminate the excise tax on food and medical care. Right now we have an $800 million surplus projected. Why not use part of that surplus to eliminate taxing hungry people and taxing sick people when they go to the doctor? And that shouldn't be a political issue. That really should be common sense.
I don't think people realize what's happened here. It started shortly after statehood, and the tax director, I don't know if you remember him, his name was George Freitas.
George Freitas is a distant relative.
Is that right?
My mother was Portuguese Freitas.
Yeah. Well, he was a great guy and everything, but his mission in life was to expand the gross excise tax and to fight back any exceptions, exclusions.
Well, there's a reason for this. The foundation of progressive liberalism, which our state is, that's a political ideology. And one of the things that I have come to see is that many people who want to be progressive liberals feel that the world's not fair, and so someone has to make everybody equal. Rather than have equal opportunity, we're going to make you equal. And the Founding Fathers even recognized this. In the Massachusetts Constitution, John Adams put something that said everybody has equal opportunity. Not, everybody's born equal, but it ends thereafter. You have the same opportunity. So that's one of the ideologies and that's where redistribution of wealth is. That we're going to redistribute the wealth so everybody's equal. That's basically the ideology behind it. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we redistribute grades in schools to make everybody have a C+,
But I think you have a point there. I think the reason that people don't complain with pitchforks about the regressive aspect of the gross excise tax is they have this sense that, well, it's equal, it's universal. It covers everything and everybody, yeah.
And it's very regressive. It's not equal. It's not equal at all.
But they don't see it that way. They don't realize the fine point on that.
We started the show talking about small modular reactors and nuclear energy. Everybody thinks it's the end of the world to have nuclear energy when it's just the opposite. It's going to save the world.
Yeah. Well, I sure agree with you on that. Most states in the union, most of the large city states, the states that are largely democratic for that matter, have lots of exceptions for food and medical care and what have you, all kinds of things that are important to the safety net. And it's hard for me to understand where all this political push toward the safety net, when in fact sitting right in the middle of the room is this huge elephant called the gross excise tax, which is the exact opposite of the safety net.
Oh, it's very regressive. It hurts the poor the most. And plus you're taxing people for being sick and hungry. It's even unfair not only in how it taxes, but who it taxes. To tax the hungry and the sick is crazy. One of the other things I advocate in tax reform is taxes become so complicated, and the accountants and tax attorneys aren't going to like me for this, but I'm really in favor of a flat tax with limited deductions. In other words, you take your gross income and you deduct what a couple of maybe you want to keep the mortgage in place and donations to. So let's say your family makes $100,000 a year. You deduct your mortgage, you deduct your charitable constitution, whatever's left. You have a progressive taxation rate. If you make $40,000 a year or less, you tax it at 10%. If you make between $40,000 and $100,000, you tax it at 15%. If you make over $250,000 a year, you tax it at 20%.
Progressive steps.
So it still stays progressive, but it's a flat tax, and you limit the number. And so you basically get a postcard. You put gross amount of income, deduct mortgage, deduct charitable contributions, multiply it by 0.15 because you made $48,000 this year. Send in your money. That's
this sounds like Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a system something like that.
What's Hong Kong? It's the
very successful
very
place.
It's the money generator for communist China.
Well, that would be among other things.
Among other things.
But that would a lot of people would be unhappy with the change. The people who make their living helping other people do tax
That's called
returns.
progress. You know what, Jay? I'm going to give you some news. There are a lot of horseshoe makers, and a lot of stable operators are very unhappy with this guy named Ford, who started manufacturing cars. Boy, he brought about change.
You're right. That should not drive policy.
There was the guys that were in the political job of picking up horse poop on the road. They were very upset because cars weren't pooping.
Let's get those horses back.
This car's intolerable. It's going to change things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now the taxes in this state are a problem because the state is spending a lot of money, even with this surplus this year, and we have a sort of bloated government, and we have bills we'll never be able to pay. We have those unfunded liabilities, don't you remember?
Oh, $17 billion last I checked.
Oh, more.
And most of it's retirement benefits for public employees. I think it's way up now. But it was $17 billion, and $17 billion when they start talking government numbers now. Oh, $17 billion. That's not a trillion. But we're a state of only 1,360,000 people last census, and 17, 18, 19 billion, whatever it is now. It's a lot of money. If you divide it by the number of people we have in the state, and you have to divide it even more because half the people in the state aren't paying any taxes. They're on some sort of entitlement.
Well, I mean, going forward, I think that's a big issue in this campaign coming. And it's going to be a big issue in the next campaign and the one after that. How to pay these unfunded liabilities. They're huge. And maybe that's why nobody wants to change the gross excise tax, because you want to squeeze, the taxpayer group for as much as you can, because you need the money to cover all these liabilities.
It's not squeezing the taxpayer group. It's squeezing the poor the most. On a while, we raised the excise tax, 0.5%, and I'll bet the next recommendation is raise it to an even 5%. It's a nice round number. So it is a tremendously regressive tax. But
let's hold on that thought and another break, and I'd like to talk about government reform, which actually that sounds very sexy.
That's where reducing taxes has to begin.
Yeah, so that's Fred Hemmings, former state senator. This is Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel. We'll be right back after this break. We'll talk about government reform. Whoa. Castle and Cooke, Hawaii. Investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Collateral Analytics. Empowering the real estate industry to make better informed property investment decisions. The Foreign Trade Zone. Bringing the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone programs to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. GALEN Ho, a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company. Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island. The Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, incorporating diverse perspectives to design a flexible and forward-looking energy strategy. Hawaii Energy, the state's energy and efficiency program created to help Hawaii's residents and businesses adopt a clean energy lifestyle. Hawaii Gas, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Hawaii Pacific Health, bringing technology and teamwork together to transform healthcare in Hawaii. The High Tech Development Corporation, attached to DBED, is the state's leading technology agency. The Scheidler Family Foundation, supporting educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including Think Tech. Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidel. We're here at Think Tech Talks on a Friday about community matters, because it does, with former State Senator Fred Hemmings. And we reserve this part of the show, Fred, talk about government reform. But can we lead into that by your impressions of the two-party system, such as it is, and what is happening, has happened with the Republican Party since you began with it some time ago?
Well, it's been all downhill, and there really is no two-party system. It harkens back to Thomas Jefferson's letter to James Madison about monopolies or stopping monopolies being included in the Bill of Rights. There's a one-party monopoly, and the consuming problem is that there's no checks and balances in the legislative process and what you see is what you get. And if you're happy with public education system, with the cost of living, highest cost of housing, highest number of people living on the beaches and in the streets and homeless, the other social economic problems we have, single industry economy, then you like the way things have been run here politically. If you want to see change and think we can do better, which I do, I'm not a drum beating Republican. I'm a conservative, and I want to build coalitions. I think people like Ed Case, Ben Cayetano, and others have something to contribute, and we gotta, I would love to work with Ben. I think Ben's a great guy, and there's certain things we agree on. Let's find those areas where we agree. Ed Case is, very innovative man. So I'd like to see all of us work together, not necessarily under one political label like Republicans, but try to see if we can bring about the change we need. I do have to caution, though, I don't think a new third party would be good.
I was going to ask you that. You anticipate my question.
Well, let me tell you why. Because I was a victim of it back in the 90s. I ran, 94 I ran, interestingly enough, against Ben Cayetano. I was on the ticket with Pat Psyche, who ran for governor, and I ran for lieutenant governor. And we started out the campaign with 53% polling results in favor of us. Ben Cayetano ended up winning the governorship with 37% of the vote. Now you say, well, how say? Well, that's simply because a third party came in. It was Frank Fossey, and he started something called the Best Party.
Drew the votes off.
Yeah, so you have the party of the status quo and everybody else who's yearning to breathe free and have change. You split the vote, and the status quo wins. So you really have to work through one. In our system, our two-party system, you really have to work through one vehicle. Of course, there's examples of that not being true, but in most places you have to work through a viable second party to topple the power.
But how do you change things? I mean, right now, here it's said that the Democratic Party controls everything. The Republicans are shrinking in this legislature. Right. How is that a two-party system? And more to the point, how do you fix that? How do you build up the underdog, so to speak?
You'd have to build. Maybe the Republicans should compromise, and the independent party people should compromise, and both get in a vehicle that's neither one of them. Build a third party that builds a coalition. My point is that in order to win, you have to build coalitions. You can't divide. You can't take the opposition and divide it in half. You have to figure out how to get more people in the coalition for change, and maybe that's the name of your effort this year. Here's a coalition of change, and here's all the people that are part of it, and
and you go on issues instead of old party loyalties.
Well, that's what's so nice about the nonpartisan city council. The city council is nonpartisan, and so what happens is, and I would love to see the legislature in some ways go into this, have a nonpartisan legislature, because then people reasonable get together, and they build coalitions based on the issue. Not, I'm a Republican, I can never vote for them. I'm an environmentalist, and so I want to see people that protect environment. The Republicans, their track record on environmentalism is, other than Papanao Moko Akea, has not been that great. We got to cut back on the smokestack industries, on Detroit and the gas guzzling, carbon emissions and all those things. So there are problems that Republicans have to compromise on too, and Democrats certainly can compromise on the programs that aren't working.
What do you think of the Tea Party phenomenon?
I think the Tea Party should be part of the effort for change. I think they're great. They're very conservative, and their voice needs to be heard. And some of the things, for instance, the subject we're talking about, government reform and cutting taxes and getting government out of our pocketbooks and controlling everything we can eat and drink and everything else. I think the Tea Party's right, and we need more thinking like that. That's the way it was when I grew up, and I lived. People are in trouble now, the ones that are now enslaved to entitlements.
But don't you think the Tea Party's in trouble for the next election, huh?
Yeah.
Because they went a little far, and they created the tumult around the debt ceiling and so forth.
Yeah, I think that mentality is going to still be part of the process for reform in America. What you choose to label it is a whole different thing. A lot of us, politics is the art of perception. It's what people perceive. The people here in Hawaii, in many ways, are like the wife that's getting, in some ways, abused by her husband. But she still comes home at night and gets in bed with the same guy, and we got to figure out what's in this state's best interest, and of course what's in the national best interest. Government reform, for instance, I like to think of myself as a political economist. That one of the biggest and most egregious and expensive failures in the state is the state health care system. Several years ago, Maui Memorial, which is a state hospital, a private group wanted to start a private hospital there to be along the lines of Queens and to service the people of Maui. And the state, who has their own monopoly hospital, also controlled giving out the licenses to start hospitals. So it's a huge conflict of interest, and the private hospital was shot down. Maui Memorial is subsidized by the taxpayers. The last budget I worked on in the state legislature was about $40 million a year for just Maui Memorial. And a huge amount of money goes to subsidize state
The
health
neighbor
care.
island problem.
Well, in rural areas, you do need state hospitals and clinics,
Yeah.
but on Maui, you could easily have a freestanding, and guys tried to put one up with private money, and you pay just as much at Maui Memorial as you pay at Queens, and if you're really sick, you fly an air ambulance to Oahu because, you know, Maui Memorial doesn't offer the services they should because they're a state-operated hospital.
Yeah.
There's reasons for the high cost. Now's not the time to go into it, but privatizing government services would improve the service, create a competitive marketplace, and reduce the cost of the service.
And that means public-private partnerships.
Exactly, that's the key to it. The public sector partnering, the public supplies the land, the maybe the private supplies is the capital and the management. You know, there's can be any combination of partnerships. Human services, for instance, can be done much more cost effectively by private providers. Lillian Kohler demonstrated that. Hawaii Child Protective Services, we even had a couple of deaths. The state was protecting kids from abusive households. Lillian Kohler won national awards because she took it out of the hands of the state operation and put it in the hands of private providers. And we went from being one of the worst in the nation to #1. We did more to protect our needy kids in abusive households.
That's the future of government, isn't it? To find good people to help them.
Exactly. That's any good business model shows that if you don't have the answer yourself, you find the peaceful person that does.
As that changes, so does the role of the individual official change. So my last question to you, we only have a minute left here, is you know, hopefully some of those millennials are listening to this. Okay, some of them might even have the skills and the inclination to get into government, Fred. Do you advise them to do that? And if so, what's your advice to them as potential public officials, elected officials?
My advice to everyone, especially millennials, is make an informed decision and make it based on the facts, not on the fiction and not on the emotion of the day or not on the very biased opinion of some of the people in the mainstream media. Make it on the facts as you find them. Also use your heart. You know, you want to be sympathetic and accommodating to the truly needy, but more decisions have to be made based on the facts and its impact on your life and the future of the state of Hawaii. Unfortunately, millennials, you're inheriting a terrible debt. You know, you're approaching $60,000 per person in this country. You owe the government right now just for existing in the United States, and that doesn't include the state long-term debt. You're going to have to pay for it, and half the people in this country aren't paying anything when it comes to taxes, or 47%, as Mitt Romney pointed out mistakenly in the debates. But the bottom line is the bottom line. It's your future. You're going to pay for it. If you want an affordable, balanced society, bring affordability and balance back into government.
Fred Hemmings, former state senator. There's so much more we can talk about.
I'm a surfer.
And a surfer.
Portuguese yardman.
This is Think Tech Talks, Community Matters. Now we know a little more about what Fred Hemmings says we can do better. I'm sure there's more than that, and we'll do it again.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate being here.
Aloha, Fred.
Aloha to you.